The Circle of Existence, 50 Short Chapters About Joy and Creativity in Your Life by David C. H. Park. Chapter 1, The Challenge. If we don't put all the larger stones in the jar first, we will never be able to fit all of them later. The old professor continued, What are the large stones in your life? Health? Family? Friends? Your goals? Doing what you love? Fighting for a cause? Taking time for yourself? What we must remember is that it is most important to include the large stones in your life, because if we don't, we are likely to miss out on life altogether. If we give priority to the smaller things in life, pebbles and sand, our lives will be filled up with less important things, leaving little or no time for things in our lives that are most important to us. Because of this, never forget to ask yourself, what are the large stones in my life? And once you identify them, be sure to put them first in your jar of life. Anonymous. At one point many years ago, I was at a party outside. We had a bonfire for light, not heat. One of the partiers had a chessboard set up. There were over 100 people there, but he seemed to want to play with me, so I sat down, although I continued to watch the party unfold. I called out to passers-by and participated in the ebb and flow around me as best I could, splitting my attention between the party and the game, but I put much more energy into the party. I don't think the same was true of my opponent. He took the game very seriously. He won, but one moment along the way stood out. It was one of those moments of crystalline insight that stay with you. He had constructed a trap to force me to move my queen in a certain way, perhaps to gain time to maneuver his pieces, perhaps to precipitate an endgame. I let him take my queen on the next move. I remember his reaction to seeing me act in such an unexpected manner. There was shock, followed by a re-examination of the board, followed by a re-evaluation of me. I could see it in his face. I was sacrificing a high-value piece, though in my case, it wasn't because of some clever gambit I had in mind. It had nothing to do with chess. The fact is that I have always been willing to give up a high-value piece, even the whole game, to gain further understanding of the truth. I see the game, any game, as temporary, an artifact of this life. Truth seems much deeper, possibly extending far beyond this life. Who wouldn't sacrifice something temporary to gain progress towards something much more lasting, perhaps eternal? In a different vein, I have observed children on many occasions as a parent. These observations have led to insights and sparked memories of my own childhood. I remember some of the decisions and inferences I made or accepted. I can see how they shaped the way I have seen things. Everything that followed these acceptances have been shaped by them. Who knows what shape my life could have taken if I had given events different meanings? I don't think that I am different from other people in this respect. I think that everyone's assumptions and expectations follow from the inferences and decisions they accept. Change the inference and you change the person. There's a feedback loop. Decisions and inferences shape expectations and assumptions. Then those assumptions and expectations help shape what we observe, further strengthening those same inferences. I have seen how different people can experience the same thing and yet have very different interpretations, draw very different conclusions from the same incidents. This is presumably because their decisions and inferences are different. Presumably, if they had accepted different decisions, they would have made different interpretations based on those decisions. They would have led different lives. They would be different people. Does this mean that there is no truth? If you can change a person's outlook and behavior by changing inferences, then does that mean you can change their outlook to anything? Or is there a stone of truth, a rock, a pillar that runs through life, giving meaning to everything in your life? Is there an unshakable column that holds your life up and gives it shape? In my experience, the answer to this question, incredibly, is yes. There is a rock to hold on to. There is a pillar of truth. Ignoring, for now, the question of where this truth comes from, I find that it defines an arc to my life. I have complete freedom to define initiatives within that arc, but the overall arc is there. For example, if my arc in life is defined in terms of helping people, I can serve that by pursuing teaching, charity work, social entrepreneurship, research, or a number of other things. If my arc was focused on animals, geology, astrophysics, mathematics, or music, my choices of pursuit would be very different. You can even choose to pursue something that lies outside your arc. There is no no. I have pursued several different things outside my arc. In my experience, doing so takes me down a path that is increasingly more painful and difficult. In contrast, following my arc leads me down a path that is increasingly more joyful, flowing, and easy. It brings clarity to my life. Suddenly, all my decisions make sense as either things or skills that I felt I needed to serve my arc, ways to deny or distract myself from my arc, or ways to move toward better understanding and honoring my arc. In other words, all my decisions make sense in terms of my arc. I sense that this is always so. It is inevitable. It doesn't preclude choice or lessen its importance, but it does provide shape to life. Choice in life doesn't. Your arc does. Your arc brings shape and meaning to your whole life. It is probably something that we are born with. As such, no one and nothing can tell you what your arc is. Your arc is something that each person must discover. Your arc is not something that you can decide in life, even for yourself. It is something that you discover. It is something that you must surrender to. When you decide in life, even for yourself, such decisions often come from wounds and other things you accumulate in this life. As such, they reflect the life you found rather than the truth that lives within you and hopefully through you. On the other hand, your arc reflects the shining truth within you, free of the wounds, egos, and other forces that you encountered in this life. The question before each person then is, what is my arc? A couple of things present themselves immediately. One is that everyone's arc is potentially different. This is not new, but notice that in a situation in which everyone's arc is different and everyone knows that and lives by it, how to go about defining a mass market is not immediately obvious. Doing so would not be impossible, but in an environment in which everyone is concerned with serving their individual arc, any mass market would probably operate on principles very different from what we have now. In such an environment, defining the shape of society would clearly be something that comes from the arc that each individual discovers. It would be an aggregate creation reflecting everyone. How society would operate and provide for everyone while continuing to support each person's exploration are good questions. But the first task of each person is to discover that individual arc. That is something that no one and nothing can do for you. It is something that no leader, ruler, or society can do for you. It is something that no teacher can lead you to. It is something that you must do for yourself. The second thing is that discovering, articulating, and living in accordance with this arc is another way of understanding truth. Gaining clearer insight into truth will likely lead to greater clarity into your arc and vice versa. An equivalent question then is, what is truth? Most people assume that everything they feel, think, or do is fundamentally a reflection of who they are on deep levels. If they feel angry, or drawn to overeat, or otherwise abuse themselves or others, they assume that these emotions, thoughts, or behaviors must spring from some part of themselves that is angry, self-destructive, or otherwise unpleasant. They usually assume those parts must be deeply buried in their subconscious minds, which makes them even more insidious and frightening. After all, by definition, we don't know what's in our subconscious minds. How can you truly count yourself as a good person if deep down underneath it all, you are really angry, hurtful, and self-absorbed? It is important to realize that there are two different things that behavior springs from, though the common assumption is that there is only one. One is your essential being. The other is life. I have a friend who calls these latter things inserts. Inserts are things that do not reflect you. They are things that have been inserted by well-meaning parents, siblings, friends, school, etc., or not so well-meaning institutions, persons, and so on. You have accepted them, but they do not reflect you. It is critically important to realize that these inserts do not reflect you. They do not reflect your true essence. However, because you accept them as such, because you habitually lose sight of where they come from and what they are, they have power to direct your behavior. Their power comes from your acceptance of them, and not from the implied notion that they reflect your truth. Actually, they hide your truth because they separate you from it. The key to eliminating their influence, so you can be yourself, is in realizing where they come from and healing the wound they spring from and protect. In the absence of a theory that can account for such things, many people naturally assume that all of these things are reflections or aspects of who they really are. They default to assuming such observations are signposts that point back to those parts of themselves that they don't directly know or don't want to know. It is easy to conclude in this way that you must be an unsavory, untrustworthy, angry, or vindictive person, even if you don't experience yourself that way, because only someone like that could behave that way. Tragically, most people seem to assume that they can't trust themselves or others, or even consider themselves to be very good as a result. They blame themselves and feel ashamed. They punish themselves to make amends for imagined wrongs, or they take great pains to forget their supposed transgressions. They devote great amounts of time and energy to fighting themselves, and demonstrate yet again that a house divided against itself cannot stand. One way out of this is to have a working theory sophisticated enough to handle such negative emotions, thoughts, and behaviors without falling into the trap of self-recrimination. Such a theory would ideally not only provide a way to understand such things, but also a way to deal with them and correct or change whatever gives rise to them. Along the way, such a theory might also provide means to grow beyond petty distractions and annoyances toward a truer realization of self. These things can be found, in part, in various philosophies from different wisdom traditions from around the world, including art and science. Together, they form the beginning of a sophisticated theory of self. What follows are some results from such a theory of self. It draws from various wisdom traditions, but it is not limited to them. It also draws on personal insight. Remarkably, much of what comes out of personal insight is also reflected in various traditions, even though those insights came through independently of the traditions. This is a reflection of the fact that the truth is singular. Different traditions have different perspectives, but they all touch on the same truth. And this truth is directly available to everyone. The theory of self is by no means final or definitive, but it does seem to be consistent both internally and with observations of the physical universe. It generates insights that lead to personal peace and lays the groundwork for future creations, in addition to making predictions that are useful in testing the theory. One thing to realize is that the ego is a creation or a set of creations of the creative self. The relationship between ego and the true self can become malignant if they forget the ego comes from the self and they begin to see the ego as the self. Recognizing and rectifying this reversal can be full of challenges and resistance, but it can also lead to rediscovery of joyful flow and creative ease that are profoundly powerful and fun. Not only does it become possible to encompass honesty about the unsavory things in yourself, it becomes possible, even easy, to heal what is wrong. Further, it recognizes a connection between the creative self and the creation of experiences or new possibilities in the world. It points the way to conceptualizing the self as being, at least in part, divine, or very close to the divine. In this way, as you move closer to honoring truth in your life, you move closer to being able to define a whole new game board, rather than playing the same old game that you've inherited, even if it's a new game. In other words, rather than focusing on playing the game better, you are free to define and play a better game.